Seemed like about 50 years ago, I was up in the state of Iowa where I was trying to build a high school band, small town there. And one spring morning in 1936, I received a letter from Mr. Donahue, superintendent of schools in Gadsden, Alabama, inquiring as to whether I'd be interested to come to Gadsden and see about building an instrumental music program here. He offered me $100 a month. That's more than I was making. So I took him up on that. And that fall, early September 1936, I drove into Gadsden, Alabama, with everything I owned, a part of the back seat of an old Ford car. Didn't know a single person in Alabama at that time. But it didn't take long. Gadsden is a very friendly town, particularly to newcomers. And I found it a very pleasant place to be. Although the music end was pretty discouraging for a while. That first September, and only 15 students showed up to take band, and those 15 couldn't play. They just happened to have an instrument around the house they could carry. And so something had to be done about that. So I went around to the study halls in Gadsden High School, took my horn, played them a few tunes. They could get that period off to do something else. So I managed to recruit a few, enough that the next fall after graduation in 1937, we had a band of 50 pieces. And during that summer, we were able to buy new uniforms to outfit that 50-piece band. Of course, that involved a lot of help from support from civic clubs, businessmen around town. We could never have done it if we hadn't had tremendous support. I hate to even start mentioning names, but one name that stands out above all the rest as a booster was a dear old gentleman named Mr. J.V. Lyles, who owned the Lily Pure Ice Cream Company. And he didn't have any children in school. His daughter was already through school. But he loved kids, and he gave us tremendous backing, along with just a great many other people. And so wasn't long. The next year we had about 100 pieces, and third year we had a band of 120 pieces. But after that first year, we had two high schools then. Emma Sansom High School wanted a band too, so Mr. Donahue told me I spent about half my time over Emma Sansom. So we started the band at Emma Sansom, 37. And of course that put me in a pretty tight spot. There's a big rivalry between the two city high schools. When they played each other in football, I had to stand down the end zone and put a student in charge of each band so that I wouldn't be on anybody's side of the field. And after a couple of years, Mr. Donahue decided I need a little help. He hired Lamar Triplett to come and take the Emma Sansom band. And I devoted my time to Gadsden High School and 2 junior highs that at that time fed into Gadsden High School. And there were times there when I had as many as 400 kids taking band every day. Didn't even have a lunch hour. Had to drive around all over town and catch them where I could catch them. When I left the Midwest to come to Alabama, my plan was to stay about 2 years, get this thing moving, then go back up in the Midwest somewhere where my roots had been up to that time, where I knew a lot of people. But second year I was here, I met a little lady, a little Gadsden gal that changed my plans, and she's been changing them ever since. And I recall when we went to, I think it was the first Blue-Gray game that they held in Montgomery. They had a band contest, and we entered that thing and practiced all Christmas vacation, getting ready to go. And one of the funny things that happened, we had a deal where we going like hell across the field, and we made a sudden reverse, and everybody did a 180-degree turn and went the opposite direction. We had a little guy named Jack Connell playing trombone. Jack whipped around so fast, slide flew off his horn, just went scooting along on the ground. So we wound up the drill with one trombone player only had about half a horn in his hand. And remember another occasion, we were over in Anniston playing football late November, cold, muddy night. We were doing something about like that. And a boy named Bill Giles playing the bass drum. Bill has passed away. He was president of the bank up in Albertville, time of his death, I believe. We looked out there, and Bill went to make his cut, and I could see him and that bass drum rolling end over end out there in the mud, and finally he came up on his feet and never missed a beat. And a lot of funny things happened. A lot of sad things too. Sad to think that a lot of my kids have left us, going on to play in a big band upstairs. Lost some in military service, and lost some others that were very dear to us. But that's the way it goes. I remember another cold November. We used to play Anniston the last game of the season. started later than they do now, so it'd be right about Thanksgiving time, and we playing them over here one cold night. In fact, it was when they were rebuilding Murphy Stadium. The old stadium used to run the other way, east and west. I think this was the first year that they don't believe that it's even quite finished to build it with WPA labor out of native rock around here. But it's so cold that night that the horns froze up. The spit in the horns froze to ice. Everybody run. They had some old oil drums with fires built in them. Some of the kids would get over there and get the horn up close to that old drum and get it thawed out enough where some of them could play. One time down, we played Bessemer Thanksgiving morning, and it was snowing. It snowed during the game. We got out there like a bunch of fools. And the reason they played it in the morning, Alabama and Vanderbilt were playing that afternoon in Birmingham. We left here in the middle of the night to get down there and play that game and early in the morning. We made a lot of trips. We were the sort of a novelty because we didn't have any bands north of us here. Huntsville didn't have a high school. We didn't have a band of any kind, I guess. Because every time they'd have something up at Huntsville, they'd charter us a bunch of buses and we'd take off for Huntsville. And we'd go to Rome to play and a lot of the small towns around. I don't know if they learned much in school, and we were often. I think they finally decided we'd have to cut down on that business so kids go to school and learn a little something. Well, we enjoyed that and were instrumental in getting some bands programs started around other towns where we'd been. They thought they'd like to try that too. And we'd go help them if they'd ask us to. We'd go tell them what we knew about it and how to go about it. Pretty soon, wasn't very long, every crossroads had a band. Since we were first around here, we did introduce some new things that are pretty old now, but they were new at the time. We were the first band that I know of that used flag girls, and we started having homecomings. They'd never had homecoming, and we did a deal that attracted quite a bit of attention. And as an entrance onto the field, we let half the band line up on each side of the field in the company front and come charging out there like it's going to run over each other. And we marched with timpani on a cart. That was the first time I'd ever seen that done. And I guess nobody's ever done it since. It must not have been a very good idea. But that was Mr. Lyles again. I went down to Mr. Lyles and told him we need timpani, kettle drums. And he said, well, how much do they cost? And I said, I guess about $800. He said, well, let's get them. Can't play them if we don't have them. So I ordered a pair, and he got Mr. Kittredge, who was at that time head of Alabama Power Company here, job Tom McKenzie has now. Mr. Kittredge was kind of a hobby tinkerer, and he built a cart that we could mount those kettle drums on, and we'd go tearing down Broad Street with some good-looking gal playing the kettle drums.
That's cute, Dave.
One of our majorettes, a little gal named Emmerdale Nunley, she became Miss Alabama and went to the Miss America contest in Atlantic City. I sat up all night arranging the music for her, take along with her so that she could sing with an orchestra up there. And she later sang professionally with a band in New York. I know I'm going to leave out a lot of credits I ought to give for the success of the band program around here. But one fellow that comes to mind that was a tremendous help to us he was sports writer for the Gadsden Times. I guess probably the only sport writer they had. His name was Frank Paget. Frank retired a few years ago from the city of Gadsden, but he wrote great sports stories. And the thing that was unique about it was that when he'd write up a football game, he'd also write up the band show. And we'd get a good write-up every week in the sports section of the Gadsden Times. And of course, these things go with something that's new and novel. I suppose now folks have got sort of callous to bands, and it's a lot more difficult, I'm sure, now to whip up much enthusiasm among other people in what you're doing. But move on a little and hit just a few high spots, and that's a dangerous thing to do too, I realize that. 1949 band I remember. That's the band that Ted Lowey was a senior. I think Ted has something to do with getting up this occasion here of trying to relive some of these old days. I guess what it is, a bunch of them just wanted some kind of excuse to come back to Gadsden and visit. But that year, we played the state contest. We played the William Tell Overture. And we had a fabulous bunch of kids in the band. And I didn't have to do anything. All I had to do was get out of the way and let them play. And when they finished, William Taylor held the contest in Birmingham that year. When they finished playing it, everybody in the place stood up, even the judges. In fact, the judges didn't write anything. They just put the pencil down and folded the arm and leave. Would go completely to pot, to people finishing every day, every year. And and even those who were around wouldn't be rehearsing, so that did help considerably. Well, I might mention here some of the other funny things that happened down through the years. I recall one time, I think it was in 1940, we went down to play football game at Selma, Alabama. And we had an undefeated team. And that's quite a trip down there in those days. So we took off in some buses, and somewhere along the way we made a stop. Kids always wanted to stop, get something to drink, something to eat. So we made a stop there somewhere, and the two buses were parked there right side by side, and when we got ready to pull off, some of the guys pulled Terry Hodges' pants off and stuck them through the window into the other bus just as it was leaving. Terry had to ride all the way, the rest of the way to Selma in his underwear. When we got down there to Selma and ready to march on the football field, they'd had a horse show there all week, and on that field, and that it left some hazards there, and but we learned how to negotiate around that sort of thing. We'd marched 2-3 years regularly before that. We'd marched in a parade up in Huntsville that they called Mule Day. Had some experience in that technique. And in fact, we had a boy in the band named Bill Day, and they nicknamed him Mule Day from that Huntsville occasion up there. Everybody had a nickname of some kind. They didn't seem to be able to call anybody by the name that Mama gave him. Called Bill Allman Slug, called Harry Wallace Fuzz. Somewhere along in there, they named me Fesser, and they got too lazy to say all that, so a good many years the only name I had was Fess, which suited me just fine as long as they said it with proper intonation. Those who played in the band long in the 50s, 1950s, I have quite some memories of Camp Neotti up at Guntersville. We used to hold a band camp a week before school started. We'd go up there and stay all week, get some great work in. We'd get about a half year's work done in 1 week up there, day and night. They worked me pretty hard at night. There's always some clown, quite a few clowns that didn't want to sleep at night. So I'd get them out there and march them in the dark while the rest of them slept. Kept me up all night long. I'd wake the bugler up in the morning without a wink of sleep. I think Shirley Rose probably marched over 1 million miles up there in the dark of night out there. Shirley wasn't one that wanted to sleep very much. And some other things that happened that maybe better not talk about. But it was a great thing for the band. We'd get some excellent people, other band directors and college music majors up there, and experts on every instrument. And we'd have our football drill stuff all worked out before school ever started. I was thinking about probably the funniest halftime band show we ever had. although it wasn't exactly planned that way. Happened it was Fire Prevention Week. Now, Fire Prevention Week always comes in October. You know, on the anniversary of October 8th, 1871, when the Great Chicago Fire, when Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicked over the lantern in the barn and burned down about half of Chicago. So we built our halftime pageantry around Mrs. O'Leary and her cow. And so we called out at the Spencer Williams Packing Company to see if they could bring a cow in there, tie her up down at the end of the football field, and they said they could do that. So we dressed Porky Deal up like a old Irish lady. And part of the show, Porky was going out there and carry a lantern and a bucket and proceed to go through the motions of milking that cow, and the lantern get kicked over and all that stuff. Well, everything went along pretty good. The whole first half, the old cow just stood down there and chewed her cud during the first half of the football game. But when it came time for the halftime show and the band charged out there and warped down on that first opening fanfare, that old cow, she pushed the panic button. She really shuddered her udder, see? Went berserk. And she started running around there and circled out at the whole length of that rope I had tied around her neck. And Porky wasn't one to be dismayed, though. He's going to see this thing through. The show must go on. So he went right on out there and was trying to ease up that wild cow. And old Porky was doing out there with his long dress and a lantern in one hand and a bucket in the other. He was just skipping rope every time that old cow circled around there on the end of her rope. And I expect that was I doubt if Barnum and Bailey could come up with a better act than Porky put on there that night. Well, this could go on for days and days, I guess. So we better close this thing out. Come to a halt here. I think the best way I can sum it all up, my 50 years here, is go back to the very first day I arrived in Gadsden. I had to have a place to stay, and I'd been here about an hour. Someone told me about a lady, Miss Ellie Hughes, at 1034 Forest Avenue, that she took in a few young men, single men, occasionally. So I went by to see Miss Hughes, and see right off, this is one of the dearest and sweetest old ladies that you're going to meet in the whole lifetime. And but she told me that right then she had 4 rooms there, but she could let out, but they were all full. She said she'd have one fellow who was going to leave in about 2 weeks, and that I could have that room for $10 a month if I wanted to stay down at the Rich Hotel. a couple of weeks till he left. I said, Miss Hughes, I don't have any money to stay at a hotel with. She thought a minute and said, I'll tell you what we'll do. My grandson, Hugh Wilmer Agricola, has a folding canvas cot here that he used at Boy Scout camp. We could just set that canvas cot up here in the hall outside my bedroom door. And you can stay here 2 weeks on that cot for nothing. I said that fits right in with my budget. And so I did. She didn't charge me anything even for the bed linens and whatnot. And of course she was a music teacher and had pupils after school there in the front room of her house, and she was the daughter of the senior Judge Diskew, for whom the Diskew schools were named. So these are the kind of people I've run into ever since the first day. And that's why I just have to say that people around here have been a whole lot nicer to me than I can ever repay. If I live to be 1,000 years old, I'll still be behind all the nice things that have happened to me here in Gadsden. Well, let's close this out now. We're just going to stop right here. Stop.